welcome to the Tabard. Thanks for coming. Fire exit.
It's like you're about to do stand-up.
Well, I am. Bunch of people walk into a theatre. I haven't got a joke, I haven't got a punchline. Fire exit's there, that way's the lose as well. Phones off, all the usual, please, if you don't mind. Today's kind of a rehearsal for Lizzie and I. We've got a few talks coming up. We want to test some material on a live audience, put ourselves under a bit of pressure in the spotlight to talk you through kind of the Hoxby origin story, kind of why we started it, how it came to be, and also for you as a discerning audience, we're going to talk a bit about Hoxby and where it's going and the direction that we think is kind of most exciting for what we've built.
So we're going to start by just talking to you a bit about the vision and what excites us and why we're here. Then we're going to pause for a Q&A. Then I think we're going to have a toilet break, maybe?
If there's enough desire.
And then we're going to talk about a bit more about the business itself and what we're trying to achieve and the kinds of clients we're trying to get and the offering. And then we're going to have another Q&A. So try and align your questions to that particular segment, and if you can hold your questions for the Q&A rather than interrupt us while we're talking, that would be brilliant.
Perfect. We've not got microphones because we think we're a big deal. We've got them just because we're recording. So please don't think that this is in any way because we didn't think you'd be able to hear us. We would like to kind of kick off with just asking you if you wouldn't mind to stand up. And your first challenge for today is to find somebody in the room who you haven't met before.
For mouth mins, that may be
Yeah, it might be tricky. Mouth, there's some people in the pub downstairs if you're struggling. We'd like you to find somebody you haven't met before, introduce yourself, and take a quick selfie.
And can you post it in the Hoxby Connect channel?
And in the meantime, we'll do the same.
Yeah, so feel free to tweet, photograph, film, post in Slack, whatever you want to do during this.
So we're going to talk, this is the start of the presentation. And we're going to talk to you about the start of Hoxby. And I'm going to start by just talking about my personal situation and kind of how I came to be here. I've only sort of started talking about this lately because I've only really just kind of realised that it happened, but in 2014 I was on fire. I was the best I've ever been at work. I was integral to an agency, creative agency that Lizzie ran. I was adding value to clients. I've been doing it for sort of 3 or 4 years. I knew my way around the agency, I knew my way around the work and the clients, and I was kind of the glue that was holding it all together. I loved it.
I went into business with you because you were so modest.
Those that know me know that I am actually quite modest, but I think it's fair to say that in that moment I felt great, and I had absolutely no objection to getting up and leaving the house at 6:30, getting to the office early doors, 7:30 before anyone else, and leaving to get home for sort of 6:30, sort of end of the day, to sit down with my wife, have a bit of dinner, go to sleep and do it all again. That was fine, I was okay with that. What I didn't realise is that being on fire eventually leads to burnout if you're not careful, and that's what happened to me. So I reached a point where I became quite detached, I would say. My wife described me as a shadow of my former self, which was quite disturbing. But in all seriousness, it's quite an isolating feeling when you're sort of closed off to the world around you in a sort of frame of mind that doesn't enable you to see the positive in stuff. I became very pessimistic about the agency, about the work we were doing, and about my role within it. So my wife kind of gave me a nudge and said, "Look, let's go on holiday for a week to Spain." It wasn't particularly good. We went away on the basis that I could switch off, chill out, come back with a fresh perspective. So we did, and I can't tell you anything about that holiday. I don't actually remember any of it. I was so detached from what was going on that I actually can't tell you anything about it other than what we've seen in pictures. It's very sad. So I remember feeling when I came back from that trip, I remember talking to my wife about it, that I actually feel no different. Psychologically, I don't feel renewed, I don't feel refreshed, I don't feel happier, I don't feel more positive. That has been a waste of time. But actually, it was in that moment when I discovered that it had been a waste of time that I realised I had a problem. That actually, if I could go away for a week with a woman I love, we didn't have a child at that point, and feel no benefit from it, then there's something that needs to be fundamentally addressed there. So it was in that discovery and in that realisation that I decided that I would make some pretty fundamental changes to my work, to what I did, and also to the way I thought about work, my psychological contract with what work is, what it means to me. And that led me to a conversation in the Syndicate Social, which is a pub not too far from here, in Shepherd's Bush, if anyone knows it, one dark Christmas evening. But we'll come back to that.
So, concurrently while Alex was going through this, I was pregnant with my son. And it was a very exciting time. I was thrilled to have Finley, and I kind of went through some challenges with that whilst I loved having a child and being a mum, for those of you who've been parents, but particularly mums, you'll know that when you have a child, everyone refers to you as mum. The doctors, the nurses, the midwives, and that comes with its own challenges when, like me, you may have spent your life having an equal career with your partner, for example. So my husband and I had always had very equal careers. We'd always progressed the same, we'd always dedicated ourselves in the same way to our careers. And then suddenly, 2 weeks after our son was born, he went back to work and he went back to the life that he had before, and I was just mum. And don't get me wrong, I love being a mum, but I found that really hard because I wasn't prepared for that transition. And it was something of an identity crisis for me because my perceptions of self really changed. I was forced for the first time to evaluate, do I want to be a mum? Do I want to be a working mum? How do I want to engage with everything else that's been happening in my life previously? And it can be a really lonely time. But what's brilliant is there are lots of groups of other mums that you can go and talk to. And I met some inspiring people during that time who've become lifelong friends. And there was one particular conversation with a lady called Philippa, who had always worked really hard at her career. She was very dedicated and very successful, and she was an HR director. And she said to me, I'm resigned to the fact that I am not going to be able to pursue my career anymore. I'm going to go out and get whatever job I can get that allows me to work 2 days a week. And I won't be able to be an HR director, but that's okay, because what matters to me more is to be able to work 2 days a week. And it was a real tipping point moment for me, because it made me start to think not only about Philippa and about other mums, but actually about people being excluded from engaging with work in a meaningful way generally. And I started thinking about people with disabilities, or people that lived outside of cities, or people that for various personal reasons, carers, students, couldn't engage with work in a way that they wanted to. And I got pissed off. I just felt like it was unfair. I was quite angry for a while because I think I was sleep deprived in my defence, but I think I kind of realised that this perfect world I thought had existed actually was not perfect, and there were big changes that needed to be made. And it was in that frustration that I ended up sitting next to this man at the bar in the Syndicate Social in Shepherd's Bush. And
we worked together.
There it all
It wasn't a complete coincidence.
We sat next to each other.
Hello! Let me tell you about my problems.
It was a bit like that after a few beers.
It was actually, yeah, it was. We had a long chat, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And the start of the chat was very coherent, as I remember. We were talking about all the challenges and that we felt that someone should really address this issue. You know, there was a lot of opportunity both to make people happier, but also for better business if someone could address this issue. And then a couple of dark and stormies later, I think it was well, many pints later, I think we were saying maybe we should address this actually. You know, we feel passionate about it, we run a business, you know, we can do this.
For our own personal reasons, we wanted to work differently. I think the kind of conversation albeit hazy, kind of centred around the fact that there's something wrong with the model of work that we're all kind of conditioned to. It doesn't help us do our best work, it doesn't help us be happy, and it actually excludes quite a lot of people from being able to do meaningful work, and work that they're perfectly talented at doing.
So by the end of the night, when your wife came to get you, as I remember,
Me out.
but by that point, I think we were leaving with the vision that we were going to change the world. So having started the evening thinking someone should do something about this, I think we left being like, come on,
Yeah,
we're going to do this.
we came up with this word, Jane,
The start.
work style. Rather than working in a predefined manner, we should be free to choose our own working manner. And if everyone's got a lifestyle, why shouldn't they have a work style too?
And we wanted to create something that was a neutral word as well, because things like part-timers, shirking from home, there are lots of negative connotations with working flexibly, and they're subtle and they're funny, but actually they do make a difference. And so we wanted to conceive of something that was a neutral word that people could say to other people, what's your work style? And mean it in all kind of genuine intent. I've noticed a few other people using the word work style.
In the right way as well.
Yeah, outside of Hoxby.
Yeah,
So I just want to lay
what-
claim to it now
Yeah.
that we came up with
We originated the word,
But,
and it doesn't mean what you wear to work.
You do love these trainers, though, right?
I do
You
love those trainers. I'm not going to judge you.
So at the time we were lucky enough to be running a creative agency, and that gave us a chance to try this kind of work style concept that we'd come up with. And our prototype is here in the room, would you believe? Jane Hunter, please stand up.
Hey Jane.
So this is Jane.
Round of applause for Jane.
So Jane is a founding equity partner of Hoxby, but she was also part of the inspiration and the live test to make this work. So when we originally spoke to Jane, she said, I'd love to come and work for you guys, but I'm only willing to work term time, because Hugh and Annabelle were 11 and 9, or around that age at that time. And so she was very clear that those were her terms. And we said, that's fine. Obviously, it's our company. That's completely fine to try doing that. So Jane was obviously quite a senior person within the organisation, testing, working in her own work style. And at the other end of the spectrum, we had Kasha, and her partner had relocated with his job to Cyprus, and she moved with him. So she was working remotely as well from Cyprus. And it worked brilliantly for her as well. So that was our kind of first test. But what we learned from that was that actually what's really hard is when you're in the minority, because you really miss out on a lot of stuff. And I was working part-time because I had a young son at the time. And when you're in the minority who is not in the office, you feel like there's always good stuff going on. You feel the FOMO, when actually it's not always that great, but it feels like there is. And so at that time we had the insight that if we're going to do this properly, you really have to commit to it. You can't just be open to people being able to ask. You need to put it at the very centre of everything that you do. And that's where the community spirit and everything that goes with it came from.
Yeah, the realisation that actually what we needed to do was build a group of people who all shared the same outlook on this way of work is what was required for everyone to benefit from it. It's no good having a kind of a mixture of opinions or perspectives. You've kind of got to have everybody, and one of our mantras is about respecting the work style. It's about everybody showing each other the same respect of individuality and individual choice over work style that really makes the difference. So that's where the community model was born, and where the principle of everybody pulling together to achieve something more than the sum of its parts is really kind of what spawned the Hoxby Collective as an entity, and still underpins our growth and our success.
And so work style has changed a lot since Jane the prototype. Jane was also the prototype for what is now in the Partners channel, the view from my hairdresser, which we have going. I have my highlights done every 2 months. When I'm sitting there in foils, I have 3 hours in the hairdresser. That is pretty much my most productive time. Don't judge me from the fact I'm working for the hairdresser, because that is extremely productive. It's very antisocial to the hairdresser, but she seems fine with it.
It's a highlight of your week, isn't it?
That's why I brought him along.
Some are good, some are
Hi,
bad. This is why we're testing. You don't
That
laugh, I won't use it again.
one not
That's what we're doing.
That's one example. The other thing I was really pleased to see is that WFH, which in many companies is an abbreviation for working from home, but Hoxby is working from hammock. So Abby, changing the world there one step at a time. And I think that there's levity that comes with it, but I also had the misfortune to experience the true value of Hoxby and work style when I was pregnant with my twin girls, who are now 2 happy, healthy 16-month-olds. I had some very severe complications during the pregnancy that meant I had to have surgery at 23 weeks, and I then spent 9 weeks on bed rest. And during those 9 weeks, I had 11 hours a day by myself. So my husband would take my son to nursery and he would pick him up at the end of the day. And for those 11 hours, I was on my own and I was in bed and I wasn't in a great mental place. I was extremely anxious about what was going to happen. But I was able to escape into the dream world that was Hoxby every day. And it was absolutely amazing. It was inspiring because of the talented and exceptional people within the community. But it also was a place where nobody knew what was going on with me. Nobody was pitying me or mincing their words or being sympathetic. I was able to just be my normal self in that world during that time, and I'm extremely grateful and will forever be for what Hoxby could be to me during that time. But it also gave me real true insight into the benefits of this work style that we talk about and this community that we're creating and this model, because I was able to see how it might provide for other people a chance to be perceived in your work environment without any of the prejudgments that come with how you are in your physical state.
Follow that. Apparently there are some statistics about how dads or kids who benefit from time with their dads at a young age benefit over the long term. I'm not 100% sure what they are.
Less of them get divorced, less parents getting divorced. The
Correct.
children are more stable and adjusted, and they are both happier, the dads and the dads.
That won't apply to my child. Spending more time with me, she won't be well adjusted. No, I think the thing for me with work style is about having time with her. Like the premise of this is it's different. We're creating an environment whereby mums and dads and people in general can lead a different life, and so I choose to spend an extra day a week with Olivia, just the two of us. She's nearly 2 years old, and I hope that in the long term that will benefit her in some way more than if I hadn't. I don't know whether it will or not, but I enjoy it if she doesn't. Another episode of Paw Patrol. That's fine by me. I have Tuesdays with her, and Saturdays and Sundays I share her with my wife. And then, the other 4 days she's well looked after, so I kind of indulge in Hoxby, and I'll work during the day, and sometimes in the evening I'll keep her kind of pre-bedtime free, and I'll read her stories and same story again and again, and that's great. That's fine. I have no idea how many hours I work now. I used to count the hours, and now I don't. I judge my success by the success of Hoxby and by my connection with my family. If I feel like I'm connected to them and they feel connected to me, then we're doing things the right way. So that's my work style. I'd like to invite you to discuss your work style with the person sitting next to you. So just take a minute to explain to each other what your work style is and why it's important to you. Go.
Anyone else?
Sure.
Yeah, so, do we go?
No.
So, I've got 2 young girls, so I like to take my girls to school.
How old are they?
2 and 6.
Can you say your name before you say it? Just
Yeah,
so
Malv
people
wants
know.
to tag you on.
Malv wants to meet you later, give you a business card.
I'm just thinking of everybody else.
No, yeah, of
you're
course.
right. We meant to say
It's
that.
for everyone else's
You're
benefit.
right.
Thanks,
I'll call
man.
you back.
Good man.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark. So, I'm pretty new to Oxford, but I like to go take my girls to school and nursery. I like to go pick them up every now and again. So I like that flexibility to work around that.
I think that one of the things that we increasingly find is that everyone has their own mini learning platform
Yes.
for being here, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to share our stories. Is that we because of the way we work, we don't require anyone to share anything they don't want to. But equally, sometimes it means there are these hidden, inspiring stories that we also don't know about that are inspiring to hear, and if people are happy to share, then it is amazing. I also find it a bit depressing because it reminds me that we are living at an extreme end of the spectrum and a microcosm of the working world, where the rest of the working world fundamentally is not treating people the way that they should. But hopefully, the more Hoxby grows, the more we can be the prototype that illustrates those businesses. That if you want to retain talent and if you want to change the world, then what you need to do is treat people like they should be treated.
I sort of articulate my work style as organised chaos. I love working with lots of different people and lots of different projects, and that might be half an hour with one team on the Amazon project, or an hour helping you guys out with a brand, or 2 hours teaching, or 3 hours teaching. And my day might be teaching students in the morning, doing a Hoxby call for an hour, teaching students for 3 hours, doing another Hoxby project, and then Hoxby in the evening, depending on what I'm up to. But the flexibility in the way you can work, you can literally do a half an hour every day of the week just on Hoxby if that's what you choose to do. And that's amazing. And then you work with so many different projects, with so many different people. And I don't know anyone that works that way. So that's
One day, everyone will.
Thanks for sharing that, Mike.
Does someone out there have a Julie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
I don't know you, but I recognise your face.
So yeah, my work style is was quite flexible, but I have like core working hours. So I work 3 days a week, and that's so that I can spend more time with my 2-year-old and my 5-year-old. And then for some weeks I work 5 days a week. It just depends on how many clients need me, and being able to schedule it in. And that's worked really well to be able to know that I can work, do like full time for a month, to know that I can take August off to spend with my family, and so that I get that time. I personally got made redundant when I was pregnant with my second child.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you know what, the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me start my own business, start my own studio. So I personally have a mix of my own clients, and then now I've been working with Hoxby, which I've been loving, and yeah, just love the other fact that you can come on loads of different projects. Also, professionally, like amazing different experience, working with different people, so many other different teams of people. So yeah, it's been great. But I work at night, I work in the day, I work weekends. It just depends on how much work I've got that month and what I need to do. So it's nice to be able to have this more time, and then you can grow it and need it.
It enables you to work in the optimal way. Because, especially with a creative person, you might be really flowing at 3 at night, work 6 hours, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be in the building 9 to 5.
I agree. And it's amazing getting everyone here today as well. You're all awesome people. People are awesome, generally. If you give people kind of the freedom to do their best, to trust them to do their work brilliantly, there's no reason why they can't, and certainly they don't need supervision in doing it. But I think we forget that we're in as Lizzie says, a kind of very, very small microcosm, a kind of utopia that the rest of the world doesn't really know anything about. In fact, shall I segue into the next slide, which is about getting a proper job, which is probably what most people are telling you should do. So we hear this phrase quite a lot, and Hoxby's use it as a point of reference for the past. So they'll say, I used to have a proper job, and it was rubbish. I'll tell you why it was rubbish, because I would work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, if I was full-time, 3 days if I was part-time, 5 days in 3. I think we forget that the rest of the world is still in the proper job mentality. There are only 416 Hoxbys, as at today's account, and that is not enough to make a dent in the world. Everybody else is still thinking about proper jobs and telling us we should get a proper job, because that's what they're conditioned to. The 8-hour working day, Sir Bobby Owen, in 201 years ago, coined the phrase 8 hours labour, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest.
What a ledge.
What a ledge.
He was at the time a total ledge though. That was when people were working 13, 14, 15 hour days in the mills.
Now in the office.
Yeah, and for them to be able to work just an 8-hour day was unbelievable. But I think he'd be pretty upset if he knew that 201 years later everyone was still working this way, because to be honest, give or take 20 years, that's about 100 years too long. And things have changed. We should change, but it just goes to show how societal and behavioural norms, once they're ingrained, it's very hard to change them.
Yeah, it's hard for people to step out of the paradigm, never mind companies, because the paradigm serves the companies pretty well. In fact, it's been the kind of foundation for which they will have structured and all the kind of employment contracts that they've got. So actually changing that is no small task. And also, you know, a lot of companies are wondering what the incentive might be to do that, because it works for them. So companies are pretty slow to move, and actually they always have been. I remember I had a company phone when I had a proper job. Orange SPV E650, complete with sliding out keyboard, QWERTY keyboard. It was an embarrassment. I took it everywhere, but everyone
I
else.
think it's way too fat to.
Well, yeah, it was completely pointless keyboard. Everyone else was using smartphones, and I was on. This was brand new to me. Here, have this phone. It's great. You can get your emails on it, and you can send emails from anywhere, and you can take it with you along with your really heavy laptop that's going to give you spinal trouble later. But you know, a lot of the tech that I ever got through work, and this is a sort of a banal example, but it was always a bit behind the times, and I always felt a little bit embarrassed by it. But I think it's just an example of how companies tend to be a little bit behind the curve in terms of being up to speed with technology and what it's capable of doing. The interesting thing is that times are changing really quickly now, and that sort of attitude to technology is not going to serve companies particularly well, because technology is changing everything. It's making, and we talk about it in kind of 4 fundamental ways. What?
4 fundamental catalysts, I think, for why we're here.
One of which being technology.
One is tech, and tech is probably the biggest change.
Tech underpins everything, I think, in terms of, because it's affecting our expectations outside of work, you know, and what is possible through tech. That's all changing, and it's changing our perceptions of what work could and should be. So we're becoming more attuned to the opportunity for flexible working, and actually that's changing at a societal level. There's a bit more interest and understanding, comprehension of what flexible working can do. It's also enabling globalization, 1.2, and that's happening at pace. And it's also enabling people to access work earlier and to stay in work longer. So the demographic of the workforce is changing massively too. So those things are conspiring to force companies to have a pretty big rethink about what work looks like and what a proper job should be.
So I think that everyone in this room is already with us on the fact that it probably is time for change. But it was as a consequence of those 4 areas, tech, globalisation, societal values and expectations of work, and demographic changes, that we felt that the time was right for Hoxby. And sometimes I do look back and I think, why didn't we start Hoxby 5 or 6 years ago? And I think the reality was the tech just didn't exist. Realistically, the fact that we can all live on Slack and that we don't have an office but we have Slack as our office, the fact that we can collaborate online through Google Suite, use Workable for our application process and for some of our team curation, there are a myriad of different systems that through tech now make this possible, and not least the prevalence of Wi-Fi. Because even now, Alex and I say, you can work from anywhere as long as it's got good Wi-Fi, and there are some places that still definitely do not have good Wi-Fi. We've experienced that ourselves. Some remarkably progressive places that don't have good Wi-Fi. But what we wanted to do was essentially create a community to inspire change. So we wanted to be a prototype whereby we could illustrate that people could be happier, produce brilliant work, and that we could make a profit. Because we felt if we could have those 3 things lining up, the triple bottom line, if you will, then we could go to other organisations and say, look, this is where it works, we're making it work, you can make it work. And that's what we're doing. And we'll come back to talk later about the consulting work that we're trying to do more and more of around future working structures. we recognise that we are at an extreme end of the spectrum, but we can't create a happier, more fulfilled society at a total level without bringing organisations down that spectrum towards us. And lots of them won't come all the way. We know that we're extreme, but even if we can coax them just a little bit of the way down, then that will make a massive difference, because more people will have access to work on their terms and to fit their work around their lives rather than the other way around, which is what we're all about. And as a consequence, we wanted to create a community which was kind of a symbiotic organism, so where people could bring work, get work, feel like a family, share. One of the challenges with being a freelance, I think, is that it's a bit isolated sometimes, and we wanted Hoxby to just be a place where people could come together. In fact, someone said to us a few months ago that they don't see Hoxby as a source of work, they see it as a social network. Because that's not what we created it for, but that doesn't mean that that's not what it will become. We've always said that we want Hoxby to live and grow into whatever it's best to be, in order to create that change in the world. So the whole of the Hoxby model is built on trust. And I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and the guy sitting next to me, who frankly was more interested in Hoxby than he was in the conference, but who wouldn't be? He kept on coming back to this point: how can you trust people who you've never met? And I thought it was fascinating, because why shouldn't you trust people who you've never met? You know, do you believe in human nature fundamentally? And it kind of made me realise that the reason that companies want that control of where and when you work is because they fundamentally do not have that trust that if you're doing it on your own terms, you will deliver great output. So partly I think that Hoxby is around just trust, but it's also around judging on outputs. And if you trust people and you believe they'll judge on you can judge them on their outputs, then you also have this fantastic situation where you're fundamentally redefining work in order to eliminate bias, which, as you hopefully all know, is also what we seek to do. And I think that not needing to physically see people means that it's not just about not needing to be physically somewhere, it also gets rid of that subconscious bias. So you don't know a lot about those individuals. You only know what they choose to tell you, and what they choose to tell you, they choose to let you judge them on. But fundamentally for us, we don't know a lot about a lot of Hoxbys, and that's how we want to keep it, because in doing so, we don't judge them. How many people have heard of Sheryl Sandberg? Good. A well-read audience. So Sheryl Sandberg is the CEO of Facebook now, and she's an incredibly inspiring woman. And she has a much-viewed TED Talk and now whole organisation called Lean In, about how women should lean in at work and be more like men in order to drive equality in the workplace. And EY did a study recently that said at our current pace of glacial change, women and men will be equal in the workplace in about 200 years. So something needs to change. And what Cheryl's saying is women need to lean in and behave more like men. She's a very inspiring woman in many ways, but it's not a view that Alex and I subscribe to, because you would never say that disabled people need to act more like able-bodied people in the workplace in order to get along, would you? And I think our belief is that the way to accelerate that change is to fundamentally redefine the way that work happens in order to create a new level playing field where people aren't fundamentally at all judged on any of those factors, but are just judged on their output. So that's what we're seeking to do through the structures of the Hoxby Collective, and that's what we're seeking to inspire other people to do in other organisations too.
It's nothing short of a very big, hairy, audacious goal to try and change the world of work in its very fabric. But I think we're seeing signs with the gig economy and with the sort of movement towards freelance that actually there's going to be more communities like ours. People are going to join communities, and what we're saying to organisations is, why not think about yourself as a community? Why not think about broadening your talent pool to include this growing opportunity and use that as a way to also create this level playing field of work. It's better for them, better for people who can deliver better work, and it's better for business too. They get access to incredible talent that's motivated and selected on the basis of being able to deliver what needs to be done in the best possible way.
And do you want to go on one,
Jane?
Jane?
Just flick us on. We've got an equation for you to remember.
I find myself saying a lot that this is not just about, we're a social enterprise, and this is not just about creating happier lives. This is about better business. It does make sense to work this way. Fragmented working makes sense. You only pay for the people who are the perfect person to do the job. those people are the people who are deeply passionate about the thing that they're doing, and therefore they're inherently more motivated and they're going to do a better job at it. So at Hoxby we curate teams based on 3 things: skills, passions and circumstances. So lots of organisations would recruit based against skills. Some might look at passions. For us that's absolutely central. If you are deeply passionate about horses and you've always worked in marketing but never in equestrian marketing, you'd probably be the perfect person to work on that because you've got a lifetime of passion in horses, for example. And circumstances too, and that's a thing that really no one else does. And this is not easy working this way. Alex and I often say, if this was easy, everyone would be doing this. And the team curation thing is the thing that I think really makes it challenging sometimes, is how do you bring people together to accommodate those 3 things? But those 3 things work perfectly for individuals, but they also work well for business, because it means you don't have full-time overheads, you have the flexibility of resource, but you can also bring together highly, highly motivated teams who can work together. This
We
is not the
started at
end.
the start, we'll end at the end. This is the end of the talk, but as hopefully you kind of glean from what I've been saying, it's really just the beginning of what we're trying to achieve. We're going to talk a little bit more later about the work that we do and how that's going to help us realise our goal, but really what we're trying to do is something seismic, something that perhaps doesn't have an end. It's something that we will dedicate our lives to, I think, as the founders of Hoxby, which is to enable as many people as possible to have a work time. Because if we can look back on that in years to come, I think we'll feel like what we've done has been worthwhile, and hopefully something that everyone will come on the journey with us.
I think for everyone who joins Hoxby, we're grateful because, as we say, we're better together. We're all individuals, we're all success seekers, but fundamentally we can drive change when we all come together. And whether you're with Hoxby for a long time or just for a while, whether you dedicate a lot of your time to it or just a little, it's the change that we can achieve in the world when we work together that's the thing that inspires Alex and I every day. And as he says, that's what will make it our life's work, and our passion is bringing those amazing people together in order to change the world.
Thanks very much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Jane?
Jane Hunter.
What do you see as the role of government, and have you in helping to support this change? And do you think we should have any plans to engage with them in a meaningful way?
I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday. Yes is the
I
answer.
didn't know that.
That was not a hard question.
Yeah.
Yes is the answer. We definitely do want to start to engage with governments around the world on this. One of the things that we've been starting to build a partnership with the National Autistic Society recently, and they have recently been consulting on how to make the workplace more inclusive for those with autism. And we have been talking to them about whether they can make some introductions to us for the kind of bigger conversation, which is how to drive equality into work on a more global scale, and I mean global in terms of motivation agnostic or situation agnostic rather than global across countries. So that is definitely something that we want to do. Alex and I want to dedicate our time to campaigning for change, and I think increasingly lobbying will be part of that.
Yeah, we're also talking to the RSA and Sharing Economy UK, early days, but those guys are trying to prepare the argument to government for our model, for the sharing economy overall, and present the positive narrative around the gig economy, because there's a lot of negativity around it, and I think what we're trying to do as well is help them perpetuate that narrative, to talk about the many benefits that this working model, this working ethos can bring to people, and how it can actually improve lives and change lives, such that a balanced decision can be made about taxation and the differences between being employed and being self-employed. So early days, but hopefully in the years to come there'll be some big decisions made around that, and hopefully Hoxby will have had a say.
Can I just, sorry, I have a question for the risk of being mildly unpopular going getting stoned. So you kind of talked there about kind of the evidence, I guess, that sits behind some of it. So mixed into what is hugely motivating and big audacious vision. So quite interesting facts around what impact it has. And I kind of wonder, being the kind of literal person that I am, how much time does, for example, so you've mentioned kind of outputs as the focus. So a lot of what you've talked about, your stories, other people, is the motivations of why people want to be flexible. And there's a lot of stuff about happier and healthier lives. And I think it's all driven by that people don't fundamentally really want to work, but they work to get money.
Ooh, that's controversial.
I know.
I definitely want to work. Is that your question? Because I'm ready to.
My question is what, you can answer that one, but my question is what have you got or can we get evidence that supports how much time people waste, for example, talking about Love Island in the kitchen at work? How many, out of the 8 hours, I suppose is my question, how many hours do people actually work?
Where's Fergus?
Well, yeah, the presenteeism survey.
And and effectively what is therefore the real output that you could do in 4 hours if you did it efficiently in the hairdressers with highlights?
I don't know if Anna knows the stats.
No, Anna's memory does not.
No, we did a survey last autumn called the Presenteeism Survey, which we'll be doing. It's open now, anyone can do it, and we're leaving it open for organic, but once a year we'll be doing a push on it in order to get some new statistics around it. And we ask questions about whether people's working practices work for them, how much time they feel is wasted at work, exactly that question. I think it was about 50% of time is wasted at work. And I think it's like 80% of people said they work on holiday as well. It was pretty bleak anyway last year, and I'm hoping that we see some positive traction. But that is exactly what we would like to start to be the spokespeople of, getting some data so that we can be at the forefront of the conversation to say, look how this is not working. And I don't think that makes you unpopular at all. That's exactly, I think, what we should be saying, which is this is not just about happiness, it's about a credible business case that everyone should be working this way. It works on all fronts, which is why it's so wonderful to be a part of it.
The only stats that we've got at the moment that are from outside of Hoxby are a Warwick Business School study that found a connection between productivity and happiness, and that happy people were 12% more productive. There's also a correlation to unhappy people being kind of equally unproductive in terms of a sort of generic study. So there is a link between happiness and productivity, but it's almost not really addressing what happiness is.
Well, there's also a McKinsey study, isn't there, that 97% of people working for themselves are happy, which is significantly more than their employed counterparts.
40%.
Don't want to put you taking that job, a proper job. It'll be great, but 40% of people are, you're going to be one of those 40%. It'll be fine.
More people in a proper job are looking to leave than stay. 60% of people employed say they're unhappy and looking to leave. So I think that sort of speaks to itself of the issue with employment, and it's very constructive.
Can I just say just about the whole freelance versus employed thing? I've done both. I've been self-employed for longer than I was ever employed. I don't think being freelance is for everybody.
Yeah.
You need to make work, and you need to be dedicated, and you need to go to work on your own, and it's not for everyone.
No, it's not. You live hand to mouth. Well, my husband's freelance as well. We live hand to mouth.
Yeah.
We're really busy at the moment, but we know that in August we'll have no work.
Yeah, I'm dead in August.
Make hay when the sun shines.
So we have to work extra hard when the sun is on.
We do say that to everyone. Whenever we're talking to people, I used to be like, yeah, come join Hoxby. And now I say, Hoxby is not for everyone. Like, I literally use that phrase because it's really not. Like, you need to be self-aware, self-motivated and accountable. Basically, I think that's the thing is, do you want to be exclusively judged on your work, only as good as your last job, and not knowing what's coming in the future? And for some people it's easier to just go and sit at a desk and know they'll get the income from it.
I think the other important thing though is we owe a massive debt to the people who've been freelancing for the last 20-30 years because they've kind of blazed the trail and almost enabled us in a way to take it to the next level. So I think the difference between being freelance and being employed has always been quite stark, but I think with our model and with the kind of rising propensity to freelance and the platforms that are enabling it to work in a different way, you're talking about a different type of freelancer in the future. I think right now you are still with the early adopters, with the people who are kind of trying it out in terms of taking it to another level, but in 10, 15, 20 years time the concept of being freelance or self-employed will be quite a different thing. to what it is now, and it would have been because of the people who've gone before us and the people in this room that has changed.
And one of our visions has always been to lower the barriers to entry, make it easier for people to work this way. So one very practical example is we pay every Hoxby 14 days after the month end on 14-day payment terms, regardless of when the client pays us. And that means that Hoxby's can work with the likes of Amazon Web Services when maybe otherwise they couldn't. And similarly, we know it's lonely freelancing, and so we try and bring people together for things like Hoxby Home. So we are constantly trying to understand what are those barriers and how can we help break them down to make this an easier way for more people to work, because it is a scary thing, and the more that we can make it accessible, the more people will work this way, and then gradually we'll see that whole scale change that we're looking for in a happier, more fulfilled society.
I think just on that point, I'm an accountant by trade, so fall asleep, please.
I'm married to an accountant. That's pretty cool.
Bit of solidarity going on. So, like the finance and the corporate industry is pretty slow to the whole freelance idea, really, and the mindset's the hardest thing. So a number of conversations that I've had recently around come and have a proper job, or you're not going to find what you're looking for. It's complete nonsense. But there's a real fear around cutting the cord, and I think that's really where. I've only been involved for a couple of months, but I guess been advocating your principles for a long time. It's definitely possible, but changing the mindset is the key driver, because I can guarantee you there's a heap of finance people that don't want to be doing month end in the office when it's taking 2 hours to get there. There's a conversation at the water cooler, they're really pissed off. They don't start work till 10.
Well, I'm working long hours at quarter end. This is something that I experienced personally, because I work flexibly at quarter end, because that's when my husband's working crazy hours.
Yeah.
If you could have more people fragmented working, coming together to deliver that, no one would have to work those crazy hours to get through quarter end. It doesn't need to be that way. It's funny because someone asked us the question, what's the biggest challenge that you've ever had, when we were being interviewed a few weeks ago, and we were saying that is the biggest challenge. It's changing people's mindsets. It's educating people before you can bring them on board, whether as clients or associates or whatever. The need to get people to change their mindset is really difficult.
And one of the key challenges is actually senior management's mindset, who have been in the job for 30 years, I've got the experience, where they're not, they haven't been taught how to lead remotely, how to get the best out of people, how to deal with change.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Well, and that's another thing that we'll probably come back to later, is we think that senior management layer, could we be aligned with our thinking here, but that senior management layer is exactly the challenge. Really senior people are confident enough in their own abilities that they'll just work flexibly, because they're just really at that level of confidence. Junior people come in expecting to engage with work in a different way, because the generations are changing and work is changing. But it's the senior management who've been up through the ranks, they've played that game, they understand that world, and that's how they've got to where they are, that they feel a certain comfort blanket from it, and they don't want to change things, they don't want to do it in a different way, because that's what they know. And so I think it's that layer that when we look to consult about cultural change, that's where cultural change sometimes has its biggest barriers.
And it's not conscious either. And I think that's the other thing. They're not bad people. They're just, they're just conditioned to a certain way of thinking.
Well, you're potentially just poking their finger.
Well, yeah.
So on that, is your vision, which I understand is the kind of maybe at the extreme where everyone goes into a kind of freelance work, or is it more, when you talk about consulting businesses, I'm assuming it's, if you could convince a business that 3 hours a day are actually wasted, and 2 hours travelling there is actually wasted, and if they adapted their work style for their employees, then you can have the best of both worlds, because people will like structure, and I having been working myself for 2 years, like going into clients.
Would you secretly like a proper job, Adam?
I would the honest answer to the question is
you want somewhere in between, don't you?
Yeah, the hybrid, where when I was 2 days a week in an office, there's a certain amount of slack's great, right? But I like the wasted time in the kitchen if someone's paying me to be there.
But also, you like the wastage. But in a world of work without bias, I mustn't jest about proper jobs either, because each to their own. The point is that people can work in the way that motivates them. So I think for us, it's a combination of two factors. So the first is incremental change is the way that we get there. So if one company can change the way that they work so that one employee can work in a way that fits their work around their lives rather than the other way around, then we've achieved something. And the most motivating days for Alex and I are always when we talk to Hoxby. The Hoxby says, because of being able to work this way and get paid work, I've been able to do X. But at the other end of the spectrum, we want to drive those incremental bits of change in as many incidents as possible. So we aren't kidding ourselves that everyone will work this way, and maybe they will one day, but that's probably a couple of generations away. But we want every company to reevaluate whether they should be working differently. And we wrote a guest article for The Guardian that was had some pretty controversial comments at the end of it, where a lot of people said, these guys are living on cloud nine, this is never going to happen, there are loads of jobs that can't work this way. There are loads of jobs that can't work this way. We know they can't, but give us a pop at the NHS, because things could be done differently. I think that's our point, is are we doing things in the best possible way? And in many cases we're not.
The talk that we're giving in a couple of weeks' time is to kind of the C-suite, I suppose, the number of different businesses, and really the purpose is to say, look, we're building a business, and we originated that business with cloud computing already in place. We built a community with 400 people. This is a realistic way of working, and you won't be familiar with it, but you really ought to start thinking about your model. If you want to be future-proof, you need to start thinking about how you're going to take advantage of the flexible workforce in the future, and really just kind of sowing the seed for change so that those companies can provide a better platform for their people.
One of the catalysts for some of these conversations around future-proofing, this consulting around future working structures, is from big businesses who sometimes say to us, we are struggling to attract talent because grads used to leave uni, and notwithstanding the fact that people aren't necessarily going to uni anymore, but grads used to leave uni and the epitome of success at that time was to go and get on a great grad scheme. And now that's not the epitome of success. Going and working for a startup is far cooler, or having a portfolio career. And so those kinds of societal changes are driving changes in those big businesses who are saying, we need to find a different way to attract talent. Is that about free breakfast, or is it about doing something fundamentally different?
Matt, go on then, last question before we move on.
So I just wanted to draw back to the happiness thing and you talking about.
Oh, look, he's got his stats.
I'm reading a book at the moment called Grit, and it's by an author called Angela Duckworth, who's a psychologist, and grit is the premise of the power of perseverance. So, she distills down a lot of research, which is natural talent times effort equals skill, skill times effort equals success, with the common factor of both sides of that equation being effort and perseverance, and just being born into it. You look at Premier League footballers, for instance, not a lot of the Premier League footballers were the best players at school, where natural talent in their youth is because of the perseverance. But she talks to some other research that she's done around happiness and around optimism. And I just wanted to read you a bit because I've got a photocopy, and Jane has this, and Erin has it.
It's the weirdest ebook I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Don't let him be in charge of the AWS ebook.
This is what we're delivering. It's a photo.
I'll show you, I think, what a kid.
I'll tell you why.
Cutting edge.
I'll tell you why it's a photo of a book, because I've shared this with Jane and with Erin about helping us with selection.
Yeah. Cool.
And also maybe doing a bit of a test on our current community to see what stacks up around this. I just want to, the premise of this is, there's a hypothesis that teachers who have an optimistic way of interpreting adversity and have more grit than their pessimistic counterparts, in turn predicts better teaching, i.e. the more perseverant you are, the more optimistic you are, equals better output. Now, as part of this survey, they measured one more thing, which was happiness. And why have they done that? They say, for one thing, there was a small but growing body of scientific evidence that happiness wasn't just a consequence of performing well at work, it might also be an important cause. We were curious about how happy the grittiest teachers were. Did single-minded passion and perseverance come at a cost? Or could you be gritty and happy at the same time? Now after doing their survey, basically, 1 year later, Teach for America, which is what they did, tabulated the ratings for each teacher based on academic gains of their students. And when they analysed that, just as they'd expected, the most optimistic teachers were grittier and happier. And and that both grit and happiness in turn explain why optimistic teachers got their students to achieve. So from a point of view of, it's not necessarily happiness equals better, but it is seemingly from this study, it's a factor
Part of the equation.
helping influence positive outputs, not just being a consequence of positive outputs.
Brilliant.
Insightful stuff.
There you go.
Can you post that
you
picture
send that
in the
photo of that
classroom as well?
Around.
Now you want it, right?
Yeah.
For your talk.
Absolutely. Stick it in Hoxby Connect, yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mel.
No, it wasn't a question, it was just trying to...
No, it's good.
answer.
It's good.
And you-
That's what the community is about. For every question, someone has an answer, and it definitely is not always us.
Absolutely not. We are nearly 3 years old. Those tricky first 3 years. We are a three-nager. We have 416 members, as I say, across 29 countries at the moment. That is as at today. It's probably gone up to 417 while we've been in here.
Yep.
But we haven't checked the boardroom to get to it today.
I'm not sure about 29 countries either, but
That's probably more.
yeah.
In this financial year just ended, end of March, we turned over just around about 1.2 mil, which is doubling turnover year on year from kind of where we were last year and the year before that. And we've actually, as a business, turned over just over 2 million since day one.
And 1.2 million for the last financial year represents 50% ahead of plan. So our target was 785,000 for the year, and so we were pretty thrilled to get to 1.2 million. Those are not closed numbers. Helen Barnes would say we should not be sharing these.
But she's not here.
She's gonna see the recording.
Sorry, Helen.
We'll cut this bit out. There's obviously an acknowledgement from our part that we want to change the world, and doing 1.2 million a year is great, but it's not going to change the world. And having 416 members is brilliant, but again, it's not going to change the world. So we've set ourselves a turnover goal for 10 years' time to be at 24 million.
9 years now, actually.
Well, yeah, only 9 years to go, which we think is the sort of size that we need to be to claim the difference that we've made, and also we think it generates the volume of business that will mean that we're changing the lives for thousands of people potentially, just in and of ourselves and in the work that we do. So that's our kind of 10-year objective, and really what that's to do is to focus our minds on what we need to do now, and where we need to be kind of focusing and targeting ourselves more than anything. So we set ourselves a target of 6 million in 5 years, or 4 years, 5 years. So we need to get to 6 million. That's 6 times the size we are now, and that's not easy. But if we're going to get to 24, then that's the milestone we need to hit. So that's what we're focusing on, and that's kind of what's been driving a lot of our thinking around what is the type of work we need to be doing as a collective to get to that kind of number, to be creating that kind of volume of work for Hoxbees to be delivering through the platform.
It's also, we've always had scale in mind. We've always started Hoxby with a vision to scale, and it's the ultimate scalable model. There's no reason why we can't scale it, though I would say, having just beaten our plans by 50%, unexpected scale can still be challenging, and the core team have been flat out trying to accommodate some of the growth we've seen, particularly in the last quarter. Just by way of example, February we turned over 200,000 when our target was 80,000, and that, accommodating that kind of growth can still be challenging. But I think we've been talking to the core team to share these plans and make sure that they understand that we are looking to grow, and in looking to grow you need to break things and fix them in a different way, and you need to expect that success to come and reframe your thinking. So this hopefully sets us all up to be in the right mindset, and also to go out and find the right clients. And also just to add that 24 million is the 9-year plan, but beyond that we expect to see exponential growth. If you can get to 24 million, then who knows where you can go in the 10 years beyond that. So
yeah. Much of the way in which we want to do that is to create easily accessible services, things that companies need, and to kind of position it in a way that's relevant to as many businesses as possible. So, Jane, if you can focus on. So we talk about ourselves as a consultancy and an agency, these are the sort of branded services that we provide. So, future-proofing by Hoxby is going to be the consultative service that we sell to clients, and it's something that we will use off the back of talks like this. We will often go and talk to companies, and we'll talk about primarily the strength of their purpose, their culture, and their structure, because those are the three things that we believe are integral to businesses of the future. It's not about your office presence. It's not about the kind of physical things that you offer as a business. It's not about having beanbags and a slide. It's about more kind of intangible things, but things that bind a community like ours together. So we're going to take everything that we've learned, package it up into a diagnostic consultative service that says to businesses, how are you doing on purpose, culture, and structure? Where are your gaps, and where can we help? So what that will do is not only create a sort of potentially a bigger piece of consultancy within future-proofing, but then also feed into what are the changes you need to make across your internal departments to help you function better and to prepare you better for the future of work. So that's where admin, marketing, operations, HR, and finance come in, which is in the support of the delivery of the changes that we want these businesses to be able to make. So we will be splitting our kind of service offer in this way, articulating it to clients like this.
And part of the reason for driving this change was our backgrounds in marketing, and a lot of Hoxby's work is in marketing and always has been. But because of the nature of having started Hoxby, we found that companies were starting to say to us, oh, can you just help us with this? And Alex and I were personally just getting involved with that. And actually when we stopped and thought about it and we looked at our vision to create a happier, more fulfilled society, we started to realise that a big way to influence that change would be to really start to commercialise and sell the future-proofing proposition. So not only does it create a happier, more fulfilled society because it aligns with what we're doing, it also is a feeder into all the other areas. And Be London is one great example of that, that though we came in originally to do their branding, what we ended up doing was working with them on the future-proofing aspect, and now we'll hopefully be picking up across all of the other areas as a consequence. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've probably heard of B. I mean, a lot of chat, a lot of buzz around it. Basically, what we're doing for B, we're very lucky with B because they're not a massive business. You know, they're only 2.5 million turnover company. I mean, it'd be great if we could be there. But the CEO wants to be employeeless and wants to have a community model that enables them to deliver across the diversity of services that they provide as a business improvement district. And so it plays perfectly to what we offer. We can offer a collective workforce that's tasked towards outputs across the full suite of things that they might ever need to run the business and also to deliver the services that they provide. So they're a great example of a perfect client for us, really, because they have this sort of desire and ambition to work in a different way, and that we can integrate everything that we've learned to help them do that. And as I said, that started with future-proofing and has now extended across all 5 of those other service lines.
They're a great example of where if you have a visionary person within an organisation, they can become a great client. And we'll come back to what our perfect client looks like, but that's where we really pique people's interest. And Tass is a visionary, and she is inspired by innovative business models, which makes for a great meeting of minds, because obviously that is a lot of what we're about. Just to touch again on purpose, structure and culture, we think purpose, structure and culture underpins all of these different elements, but it's within future-proofing that we will look to codify that and sell within that structure to clients, whereas in all the agency services, purpose, structure and culture is something that we'll take care of because we'll be given briefs and they'll be entirely delivered by us, so that will be more behind the scenes, if that makes sense.
In terms of how we think about this in the interface with clients, obviously we're talking about acting as an extension of their business, so we're naturally naming these as sort of departments that you might traditionally have within a business. Now, marketing is incredibly broad, and we're not trying to specify too closely at this point what falls into marketing. But what we will do is build a sort of deeper understanding of what we mean by marketing, and go into that once we've diagnosed that the client has a requirement for that within their organisation. And so at the moment this is quite a high level presentation in terms of the range of services that we're going to put together.
We sometimes talk about Hoxby as a global platform for entrepreneurship. So it's the chance for people to come in and say, this is what I do, and we have obviously a core team of 50 or 60 people supporting across all areas of Hoxby. But if someone comes in, like Lindsay did, and says, you've got some great HR people and no HR offering, can I help you to build that? Then absolutely, you know, Alex and I don't profess to be experts in HR, but we've got some incredible talent within the community. So we want it to be a platform through which people within these brands can build it to be the thing that they want it to be. And it's something we always say, make Hoxby work for you, make it the thing you want it to be. Okay.
Cool. All right. Let's talk about our clients. We work with a range of clients. Now, we've put up on here perhaps some of the ones that you'll have heard of. We actually work with, I think we worked with around 30 clients over the course of the last 12 months, many of which are small to medium-sized businesses. We're targeting scale-ups within that space. We're looking to grow with businesses. So we're looking to help them navigate those first few years where it's really tricky to find people, to attract people to you, you're unknown. And you also don't want the overhead of employed people. So we're a great solution to that particular group. But we're also a really great solution to bigger businesses as well. Bigger businesses who have peaks and troughs in their workload, and who are actively looking for different agencies, different ways of thinking, and to bring creative thinkers in to solve problems for them. So as a result, we've got kind of the big businesses on here because these are the ones that people have heard of, and also the ones that give confidence to the scale-ups to take a bit of a punt, because I think, you know, we are a different model, and to a lot of businesses we're at risk, and I think scale-ups you know, are nervous about risk, as all clients are when they're taking on a service provider. So these are the clients that help kind of, I guess, breed confidence in what the model can deliver.
Bottom line, aren't clients yet, that's why they're greyed out.
Yeah, that's why they're greyed out.
Fix this technically.
So these are clients that we're having conversations with at the moment, and I think it's fair to say, spoiler alert. I'll let you carry on.
Okay, so all of these clients across the bottom are ones that we're talking to at the moment. John Lewis heard about us through PR. They read about us in that campaign magazine article, and someone got in touch with me who I'd met once before many years ago and said, we'd love to work with you. Virgin have a vacancy they want to fill. As you know, we deliver outputs. We don't put people into an organisation ever, because then we can't preserve work style. But we give us a chance to go back to them and say, send us the job description, and we will turn it into an outputs-led brief and some deliverables, and we will then turn that into a way that Hoxby can work. Merck is a big pharmaceutical company, and they came to us and said, the global head of procurement came to us and said, I've been tasked with finding a more agile, innovative agency. We still want to work with our big agencies, but we want to have another agency that works differently, and really what we want to do is engage with the freelance world, but through just a single supplier. It was a dream conversation. And then the National Autistic Society is a good example of a partnership where we've been talking to them about how we can get more people with autism into work. The statistics are appalling. I think 15% of adults living with autism are doing any sort of paid work at the moment, which is extremely low. And so we've been talking to them from a World of Work Without Bias perspective, but they have big businesses coming to them saying, we know that there are these certain skills we need, data analysis, cybersecurity, which particularly lend themselves to those with autism. How can we scale up to attract that talent? And so the National Autistic Society is saying, actually, can we work with Hoxby to be the place that we refer those big clients to say, we can't do it, we're a charity, but Hoxby, the Hoxby Collective, can do it. So there are various different guises in which those opportunities may come in.
I think it's fair to say that the clients that we build the best relationship with are the ones that share our vision. It's where our kind of purpose really resonates and kind of we find alignment. And I think that's where we're very excited by the opportunities with National Autistic Society, but also with Merck as well and Virgin on this, because we're moving more towards a client portfolio that shares our ethos. You know, I think a lot of the work that we've won historically has been a mixed bag of that. You know, some of our clients really do, some of our clients really don't, and the ones that really don't tend to not end as well. It's exciting times, and I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see how this portfolio evolves over time. But I think the ambition from our perspective is to find like-minded clients wherever possible who are looking for change.
And in the same way that we say to the Hoxbees, make Hoxbee work for you, we say that to clients as well, which is know the model and we'll explain the model, but understand that as a client of ours, you can work with us in a different way if that works for you, so that we can test this way of working and see if we can make it work in different ways. You know, as I say before, we're a prototype, so the more we can test this and try doing different things, hopefully the better the outcome.
A big driver for new biz is PR, and we're delighted with a significant upweight in coverage in the last 6-9 months, not coincidentally as a result of the wonderful Fergus. He's with us today. He's doing an amazing job at getting us coverage in the right channels with the right message. Most recently, the campaign article that we were lucky enough to put together has been great in terms of opening doors for us and getting us at the kind of at the table where the people who are buying our services are and getting us in front of them, which is really exciting and a step change from where we've been. So we want to change the world of work.
We are not starting all of these businesses.
We're not starting
right
all
now.
of these businesses, but where we are at the moment is top left in the grand scheme of life. So we're talking about how the Hoxbee model can make business work better. But the reality is that the Hoxbee model can be applied to a whole load of different things. And whilst we are excited by conquering the world of business, we also aren't limiting ourselves to that over the longer term. So this is not a, hey, next week we're going to start construction by Hoxbee. This is an indication of the scale of our ambition, I think. And we want to try and influence work at a total level, and not all work is done in a traditional business sense. And I think in time, when we reflect on our life's work, it would be nice to think that the Hoxbee model has been put to good use outside of just the business arena, and to change lives at a more total level. So this is more just a bit of fun at this point in time, but also hopefully just an indication of the scale of our ambition.
Does anyone have any questions? Did we answer your question? I think yeah.
Yeah. I mean, have you found? I guess the answer will be it's pretty mixed. But do you find some clients just don't get it at all, and they just want that traditional agency setup?
And I think we used to go in and pretend we were just another agency and just do everything differently behind the scenes. And now we go in and we say, this is what we are, and if we're not for you, that's okay. We're not for everyone.
And that's quite an early conversation.
It is an early.
Get out of the way.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're out of the room after 10 minutes because they're like, well, I want to go to an agency that has beanbags. Well, we do not have that.
Some of our Hoxbees probably do.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go to your house. We'll send them around to yours. I think we're more upfront about it now because we want to work with clients that share our vision, and so we tell them our vision earlier on, and those that want it. When we were talking to Merck, they are literally looking for what we do, and there are some conversations that are like that, and there are others where they say it's not right. It's not like every client is looking for this model, but when you find the right ones, it's amazing.
And you're not kind of knocking on the door, trying to
No,
persuade
not at all.
people who aren't really interested.
One of our issues at the moment is that Alex and I are some of the only people that can tell this story, and that's one of our challenges. We've got so many passionate Hoxbees that want to help spread the word, but we haven't given the tools of the narrative to those Hoxbeats to go and have those conversations. And now we've set some very ambitious targets. The only way we're going to hit those targets is by giving Hoxbeats the tools and the narrative and the confidence and the excitement to go and have those conversations on our behalf, because at the moment we're a bit frantic running around talking to lots of people.
And we're also really comfy with just creating bespoke services for clients. The reality is there's no reason why a client shouldn't engage with Hoxbeat, in so much as there's no retainer, there's no we're not asking people to sign up to anything other than, hey, here's access to a great community of people who can deliver brilliant work.
Well, the only time they shouldn't engage is when we haven't got people to do that work, and we'll always be transparent about that. If someone wants something that we can't do, we'll say up front we can't do that, because it's pointless going any further down the line and wasting anyone's time.
Although to add to that, to use Amazon as an example.
Yep.
So where we don't, at least I'm probably going off script, but I said, look, we can source people, put them through the same filters that everybody else is there. So that we can add that to the services we provide.
And the more they can give us transparency of their long-term plans, the more we can make sure that we have the right people to deliver them. Often people, when they want to buy work from you, or when they first want to engage, they haven't seen your output, and so they then judge you on your people. And so that's what we say is give us the brief, we'll show you the people we've got who are relevant, and then you can inspire and feel confident to work with us.
You've got 400 strong.
Amazing people. We started, Alex and I, when we started the marketing agency previously, we had everything polished, we were ready to go, we had the website ready before day one of launch. Whereas with Hoxbeat, we said right from the start, we're just going to give it a go and see if there's anything in this. And we've got this big and this many people without having that type proposition. You guys are here because you're probably dreamers like we are, but you believe in what we're trying to achieve.
This is all about societal change we're trying to make here.
Thank you so much.